another installment of the Fireside Chat. Today, we are going to be discussing parallel realities and timelines. Now, I am not a professor, but I know that whiteboards definitely help everything go up. Now, when it comes to timelines and everything in between, we're going to be talking about the prophecies over many generations. We've got the Mayans that had a prophecy and so many other things like Nostradamus. Did it even matter? Does it even predict what's going to happen in our future? Is that even possible? Is future that finite, or is it infinite? We have an evolving energy called the Golden Age. It's a period in time where things are supposed to be going good, better, or great. Does that play a role? Do timelines run like railway tracks and just kind of go side by side, or are there different ones that are crossing paths like a zigzag pattern? That's something I've always wondered. And what can we expect as an outcome if an experiment takes place regarding quantum physics? You see, why is it that when one person has a discovery, someone else on the other side of the world does? And why does it take so long for periods of that to even happen? Why is it from 1900 to 1920 did we have the most significant inventions? And really the only one as of late that's made a massive impact is the computer age, the tech age. Does that matter? And where are we going from now? The last but not least, does the quantum field get impacted by our thoughts and what we manifest? Here today, as always, we have the lovely and fabulous Hazel Moore. Would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Jeffrey. So here we are live once again on our fourth broadcast, I believe. And today we've chosen to speak about parallel timelines, parallel realities, sometimes known as probable realities, the same thing. So, the quantum theory was discovered in the beginning, early in the last century, but it's something that mystics have always now thoughts create timelines. So every thought we have, every choice we make creates a parallel reality, a parallel timeline, a probable reality, same thing. So that's why it's so important to focus on your choice, not what you want to create, on your choice, because these timelines already exist. They were predestined, pre-programmed by us in our DNA. And now that we are unlocking our DNA to a 12-strand DNA, that means that we're going to have access and knowledge of many of our parallel timelines that are going on right now. But I would emphasize that we are focused in this moment right now. That's why we came into this parallel timeline, if we're looking at the perspective of ourselves in another parallel timeline. So it's a very complex subject if you want to make it complicated.
Now, one of the things based on what you just said that popped into my head was this one thing. And you're talking about focusing on choice. We're like in a pre-programmed reality and we're unlocking our DNA. One of the thoughts that I had scribbled down on my board behind me, based on what you said, it was funny. It's almost like we're looking through a prism, and how light refracts through a prism. You look through it, and then you get a multi-dimensional output. So it's almost like our choices are the input, and the the output will end up being what those choices in our mind are. So we have like a predetermined set based on where we were as a spirit coming into the world, and then we have all these outcomes based on our choices. Does that stand to be somewhat true? I'm not sure if you can see my board clear enough, but how does that sound to you, Hazel?
I can see Yeah, we are a prism, but then we put ourselves in the prism. So that's what makes us so marvelous and magnificent at what we can do. But you must also take on board that it's only a very small portion of all that we are in this prism right now. Okay, so we are living out a predestined timeline that we chose to focus on. Now, we have come so far in our journey since, time began, since separation, took a hold on us, which we've spoken about in previous programs that we've done. We've come so far now in this century, in this time and space, that we are in another phase of our beautiful adventure where we are getting back to the beginning of what the original purpose of being on the earth was for. You've got to remember that we really went below where we were. We're only just getting back to the beginning of the Garden of Eden, the fifth dimension, understanding what we're understanding now. So we haven't really made progress. We've just brought ourselves back from the beyond the pale, from the brink of disaster. So I hope that makes sense. I want people to understand that we're just getting back to where we were always meant to be, so that we can like unfold more and more of everything. Yes, the collective is getting back to where they originally planned to be before the fall from grace. So we haven't actually made progress en masse yet. All right, then the progress en masse is that we're all going to ascend together. All right, this is the new part of the experiment that, remember, at one level is predestined, but the level that we're at, even in the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, it's still not really predestined. We're unfolding into it, which pushes the boundaries, and that's what expands the universe. I hope that makes sense how I've explained that.
Yeah, it definitely does. Now, what I want to add to it in a sense is that a question, because it's something that I've always wondered is, does my personal timeline, so when I'm looking through that prism and I'm now inside of it and I'm making the choices, how much does that impact my neighbor or you or anybody else that I come in contact with? So say I'm thinking negative thoughts, and we normally manifest that in our reality, but how much is that inconsistent with a timeline? Is it just like a slight hybrid of above and below the current spectrum that we are on? Like, how does that play a role,
Well, say for example, you're in a negative mindset. Okay, so you're going to switch timelines today back into a timeline that you'd already stepped out of when you were happy. So every mood you have, you're skipping timelines. Okay. Yes. In your consciousness.
But we're still in like 2016.
The only way you can't. Yes. We're still. But you see, 2016 is only what mankind's put there. We're only in 2016 because we're saying, oh, that looks modern. Oh, that's the internet that was built in 2016. Back to pre-Atlantis times and say, oh, I'm in 6000 BC and still have everything like we've got it now. It's but slight changes. 16 is linear time. It's got nothing to do with the quantum leaps and the quantum realities. We only use time so that our limiting beliefs can understand what we're talking about. All right, I can link now with which I've said to you, a past life, which is not a parallel timeline. It is another portion that my soul has created, and in 1432, which is going on now, I have another self that is alive and well now, and is acting out literally as a Viking. And he talks to me and I talk to him. So let's do 2016 is only a mental concept that we use for being in past, present, and future.
That's the aspect that always got to me, was when we used to discuss that aspect of things. When I have another spirit entity, like could I call it a brother or sister? Let's just go with that. And they're in an entirely like 200-year ago spectrum, yet we're both living at the same time, feeling each other's emotions.
You're in the spacious.
Yes.
You're in the spacious present.
So
yes, which is outside of time and space.
So
because I cannot walk down the road.
Sorry, I'll let you expand on that thought. When you walk down the road, yeah?
I can, right, okay, for my 3D mind, for my limiting beliefs in my 3D mind, Hazel is living in her present, which is 2016. Not to be confused with what we're calling the spacious present. Now, I cannot physically walk down this road where I am and meet my other self. It's not a brother or a sister, it's another self of mine that is walking down another road or a dirt track in what we would call 1432. I cannot meet him in my full focused consciousness here. I can only meet him in my state of consciousness, which I use another level of myself, my fifth dimensional self that is in the spacious present, to meet him. He can meet me there and we would probably laugh and he would probably say, look at me, I'm acting out a Viking, you know? And I would probably smile and say, yeah, I'm acting out someone who talks on a live broadcast somehow with another chap called Jeffrey. But he cannot be on this show with us so that everyone can see him. He is a part of my spacious present, not yours, Jeffrey, or anyone else's.
So it's spacious presence. I think I drew a diagram that might be able to.
Right.
Let me just show this diagram. So what I wrote here is we're, say, on the outside of 2016 in this dimensional space, and then down here I wrote 1432. So it's we're running parallel to one another, just in a different dimensional warp. Like, what would be the term to describe this? Is 1432 down here, and say here we're 2016, but we're still spiraling around the same dimensional path in a sense.
Yes. So we're fantastic. Yeah. So that outer circle of what you've drawn, that is all 3D density, whatever year we want to put on that. So my other self is still on that outer circle of your diagram. Because if we go into the center of your diagram, you've done spirals, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, we're rubbing it off now.
I'm going to redo it because we're supposed to be near the center. You're saying that, like, our timeline would be near the center, and the older ones. How does it work then?
No. They would all be on the outer edge because they're all in 3D density. My other self that is in 1432 is still in the same intense density, still has that duality. He still has thoughts and emotions and limiting beliefs that, you know, he's got to abide by the rules of the dimension that he's in, which is the same dimension as me. You've got to realize it's worlds within worlds. You know, it's not, there's no,
I got
outer circle of,
So then I've redrawn it. So this is the same line, but we have 1432, and then we have 2016. So we're all sort of linked like this instead of like over here and over here, because we're all going down the same path, which is an infinite realm.
Well, we're all going down the same. Let's call it density, shall we? Because we're solidly physical. We've got those limiting beliefs. So if we call that outer circle 3D, whatever year that is, it's still 3D.
Okay. So
Okay,
the whole
whether it's
sphere of things.
1432, 1952.
So
Yeah.
time in itself is not what.
And if you, it's an illusion. It's something we created to understand past, present, and future. That's the idea of time, compressed time on planet Earth, which is a 3D planet, you know, the way we're referencing it right now.
Okay, so then one of the things I opened up with was talking about prophecy, okay? We have a lot of people over time that are within our timeline that have either left markings like the Mayan calendar, which is actually a circle, it's not a pyramid, but the pyramid was a big deal. Then we had the Mayan calendar, which was all based on astrology, which is far more advanced than anything that we've come to figure as being real in a scientific form. But then we also have individuals on our timeline, whether it was in historic period of time as we see it. We had Nostradamus having visions in a spiritual sense of what could be seen in the future. He wrote in books about how he talked about world leadership, and he tried to describe even machines that were later described as tanks during World War II, during Hitler's period, which is Hitler, as again other people have elaborated on. How does that relate to us if they can project from our period of 1432 up to us, almost like passing a baton on, if we can't really see or predict the future? What is all that based on? Like, how are they even feeling and thinking these things? And how are they coming real?
Well, in the first place, to predict a future of anyone takes a highly specialized, evolved being from like the 10th dimension, where unity is, where all the timelines are merged into one or two at the most. Okay, I think it's like the 10th dimension or the 11th dimension. All of the timelines that ever were converge and come into like 1, 2, or 3 timelines. So that is from a very high reality. Okay, now from there you can be up there and you can look down onto all the timelines. Say I was thinking of you, Jeffrey. Let's just use Jeffrey. So I have this ability to go up to the 10th, 11th dimension and look down where you are in the 3rd dimension and see all the choices you've ever made, all the timelines, the parallel realities you've ever created and cross timelines with. Now, as we go up the spheres, they all start to merge and even out. So first of all, we step out of duality consciousness, which is like the 5th, 6th dimension. Then we go higher and higher, and we've only got, like, say, 3 timelines operating. So from that level, I can see clearly what choices you are going to make, which ones you're going to stick to. So that is why a lot of psychics, myself included, we've got a lot of things that did not come to fruition and materialize, okay? Always that it's a highly specialized guide level of consciousness, and you can't just do it willy-nilly. Those people that are pretty good, and I say pretty good in inverted commas, know that they don't get things right 100% of the time, or even 50% of the time. All right. Now, with people like Nostradamus and who's the chap who Leonardo da Vinci, where he said, "I see metal birds in the sky." It's like, yes, you know, they obviously had more of their DNA. The DNA strands activated, and they wouldn't have predicted everything, but they saw certain timelines of the 3D world, the timeline that they were on and that they were following. If they'd have lived like for 500, 1,000 years, they would have walked that timeline, and Leonardo da Vinci would have seen metal birds in the sky that we call aeroplanes. Okay. So as we right, okay, does that make sense how it actually works? So Nostradamus, yes, yeah, He
Yes.
predicted his death and a lot of things, but he didn't predict everything. It's not, you know, he wouldn't have been able to. But there are people coming to the planet now that are able to live consciously, like from the 11th, 12th dimension, consciously. And, you know, like, oh, what can I say? Like, I'm looking at my computer, but I can also look up and see the wall and the window and the garden outside. So the computer is one dimension. I look up and see the wall. That's another dimension. I see the window. That's another timeline. And I see out to the garden, and that's another timeline. And it's as easy as me just adjusting my vision. And there are people being born who are alive in 3D now who have chosen at this time to come in with that facility. In other words, that 12-strand DNA completely working beautifully, so that they can help the rest of us who want that evolutionary process. You know, they help us, like you said, with the 100 monkey syndrome. One person comes to the planet with 12 DNA strands activated, and just being in the same dimension as them, those of us that are striving for it, it will be so much easier.
Okay.
And that's the 100 monkey syndrome, and it's happening now. Does that make sense, Jeffrey, how I've kind of described that?
So it made complete sense to me. So some people are slightly more enlightened in a sense. I don't know if I use the right words to confirm what you just said, but when like Nostradamus could almost like leapfrog to see things in the future, what is the term? What's the term that he has? What's the ability or skill? Is it just he's a higher enlightened being? Like, what is the term?
Well, his psychic ability was that good that he could tune into his own timeline perfectly from day one when he was born. And if he'd have continued living, say, like 1,000 years, 2,000 years, he was able to follow that timeline using his psychic ability, which obviously was very expanded. Okay,
now Allison had asked a question. The third dimension is she's saying, is it a deeper compression of energy than the fourth or fifth dimension? So you use the word density to describe our third dimension. So we have a fourth and a fifth that Allison is referring to. What does compression, in a sense, have anything to do with it, if it does at all? And maybe it's just a different term that would need to be, you know, passed along to get the type of answer.
Yeah, you're right, Alison. Hello there. Yes, it is a deeper compression. Everything is compressed, and I call that density. So it's intense, it's compressed, it's dense. You know, it's like when we squash anything together, it's more dense, isn't it? So Kathy here has said, draw that circle, stay in the middle, place spokes on it. Each spoke is a lifetime. Well, it's kind of saying the same thing, but not necessarily each spoke is a lifetime, but kind of, yeah. I think I understand what you're saying, Kathy. If you want to elaborate that on a bit now. So Jeffrey drew the circle, and I was saying the outer edge of the circle, I was using that as for 3D, compressed energy, Alison. But all of my other souls that are in 3D, whether it's 1432, 1952, or 2016, or whatever, all of those are on that outer circle, because in our diagram, Kathy, that was representative of 3D compressed energy. And also you have to remember, you know, I was born into 1952, but there are many, 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 many parallel timelines for 1952. And I can go back to any one of them with my awareness and my own personal ability can take me that far. So 1952 still exists. Now, for me to go back there, I would have to really focus and set the intention to go back down that timeline. But that's not as a parallel timeline, because I'm not crossing over, like Jeffrey said, like railroad tracks. In fact, it's not like a railroad track. My words are going funny. It's more like all the roots of a tree, Jeffrey, with all these probabilities and all these choices. You know, and it's like, oh, we meet someone where the crossroads meet. We might meet someone for coffee because we agreed to meet them. You know, like when you meet someone just for half an hour, sometimes you think, wow, I really felt as though I knew him. So we've agreed to meet at the crossroads of a timeline. And then you hear of people that left their homes and were never heard of again. They've decided somehow with intense focus to switch timelines completely. Or you hear of fathers, you know, I'm not choosing fathers particularly, but you hear of parents, one parent or the other, leaving the family and creating another family. They've switched timelines completely. And if one's, you know, upset about it all, they've been forced to switch timelines, if you like, but only at this level, because at a higher level, they already agreed to it. So this is the paradox of spirituality, spiritual thinking, that people find difficult to get their heads around. But once you grasp the concept and you've had the visceral experience of it, which you can ask for, then you'll just get it. You'll just, yeah, plain as day. But all the time you're trying to work this out with your mind, it's going to seem very surreal and very complicated and so on and so forth. But we've got to remember now that scientists have discovered this quantum reality. So it's not make-believe, it's waves and particles. Waves are the collective us, and particles are the individual portions of us. Like I'm a particle. And waves follow the group. That's how it is in energetic terms. So when we start to pull away from the wave energetically.
That is when we're talking about string theory. Have you heard of string theory? Yes.
Yes. I want to go back to Kathy's question so we don't lose what we're talking about, Kathy. So it's consciousness is in the middle. No, everything is consciousness, Kathy. So consciousness is in the middle, 0 point. The 0 point is God, is source. That's where complete unity is. I believe some people are calling that 0 point now, but it's God. God is everything. And when you get to the middle of Jeffrey's circle, that is God, where everything is unity. So I hope that makes sense. So everything is consciousness, not just in the middle 0 point. So consciousness inhabits each spoke. Well, consciousness inhabits every single thing, not just each spoke. Consciousness, I'm assuming you're meaning, Kathy, spirit, that which is God. Spirit. I think that's what you're meaning. So Alison, you said here Edgar Casey. Yeah, well, he had to go into a trance, didn't he? He never remembered a lot of his stuff. But yeah, he went into another timeline to predict the medical condition of people. And you can see how he helped consciousness, human consciousness, to evolve, because he helped us to believe that. The 3D is, well,
it's
where
okay.
are we? Please skip that question of Edgar Casey.
So I keep putting this one up there because this diagram is really making more things clear to me. But it's funny because even when you draw this and you see some of the stuff that we have within our spiritual community, just within the images that are really coming to the forefront. Because this is also similar to the coding that our whole planet has. You know, we have
absolutely, yeah.
You know, we have seashells. Yeah. We have seashells that start and they form this way, and then they stop, and then their intersecting points are mathematically growing. I think it was like a 0.013. They're multiplied by to get an exact number to grow the percentage, and then you seashell, and it's very similar. And it's very similar. So then seashells, when you cut them in half, this is how they're broken down. But then if you take a pine cone, pine cones also have a similar aspect to them. And then they're formed, right? And then you cut a pine cone down the middle and you fold it outwards. It has the same coating in it. That all relates to, you're talking about the center point being like the center of the universe, which we thought was, or think is the sun, just because that's the source that's heating us and providing light to us, casting light. But really it's God. That's the center of the universe. But we have little markings here that somehow all relate to this sphere of time that we're discussing today. And how you pointed it out, you have a 1432 Hazel Moore, but it's not Hazel Moore, it's a Viking. And I have some people that I've even run into on my timeline that are Jeffrey Tracy's too. I've run into different ethnicities of me, different gender as me. I've also been learning how to communicate to other ones from my past timelines. But really, when I'm drawing all this back, it's like we have all these symbols around here that relate to this.
Can I just say?
Yes.
Can I just say that the Viking is not. The Viking is another part of my soul, my oversoul put out. That Viking is still an individualized portion, and he will always, or he will always know himself to be that, the same as I will always know that the feeling in me is what I'm calling Hazel in this lifetime. I will always be this. I will always be this individualized portion. And I will grow and go back to my higher dimensional self, and I will create lives. And I will then be an oversoul. And so it all expands. But I want to go back to Kathy. She says, you cannot apply that logic to a spiral. No, Kathy, that is true. We can only apply logic to the 3D mind. But, you know, in order to help this discussion all understand what's going on, we are applying logic to some parts of it. Because if we don't, then some people who are trying to understand it with their mind are going to get a bit lost in that. So, you know, I hope you'll, you know, you understand that we're trying to help everybody here at every level. So I hope that,
now
I do
it's also
what you're telling me.
The other thing that I like pointing out with is just that we have signs everywhere, even in our dense dimensional space in the 3D world that we have. That's all I was trying to address is, yes, we have the beautiful sphere, which is talking about timelines, but we also have things on our planet like seashells that are exactly designed like our timelines that we're talking about. So they may not be identical in nature, but the logic that Hazel's talking about is it's relevant in a sense that it's like you're seeing a stop sign when you're driving, it's there. Well, you don't see oxygen, but you know it's there too. So when I see a seashell and then Hazel points out, hey, this is how a timeline would appear if we put it on paper. Well, it's like, tell me how to draw oxygen right now. I can draw you a cloud. That's the closest thing that I could kind of depict to air. Hazel, does that kind of make sense in referencing that point?
Yes, well, you're talking about the flower of life. You're talking about the sacred geometry of all life, the mathematics of life, because everything is built on mathematics. But I'm not talking about the mathematics we're taught in school. That is a false mathematics. You know, there's bits deliberately been left out of the equations that we were taught. But you could, you know, that's the sacred geometry of all life. Now, if everything was wiped out and one cell remained, then the whole universe could be created again.
Say that again.
One cell, and everything is held in that cell. If we were all obliterated, and the earth as well, and everything, one cell remained, everything could be recreated from that one cell, because that one cell is God.
Okay.
And within everything is the totality of God, even in a stone or a pebble.
So
it's incredible. And that is the, you know, the spiral that you're talking about.
Okay, so these are just some terms that I want to clarify. What's the difference between a cell in the way you're describing it to matter?
An atom and a molecule.
So
an
a cell
atom.
would be an
and
atom.
In the center of the atom is, yeah.
Okay, so matter is made up of atoms and then cells, right?
Atoms, yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah,
then
and then they divide.
Then DNA is like the construct formed from cells and atoms, like
The structure in the cell.
Yes. Okay. So we're doing a bit of a science class here too, and also describing how things. but the thing is, like, we do talk about how our math doesn't add up to the way it should be. Like, hold on, I got to pop up for this little one here. If I thought at a young age here, if I took two cookies. Oh, sorry, two cookies, and it was one cookie plus one cookie is two cookies. But then I said to myself, what if I took a hammer and smashed both of those cookies? How many cookies would I have then? So our mathematics is basically set up to be like finite. It's like black and white. But in reality, our life is not black.
Well, in your
Sorry,
terms, what you've just literally done in effect, what you've just described by smashing the cookies is the Big Bang. That was the Big Bang.
Yeah.
We were a cookie, in obviously very coarse, rudimentary terms, but that's what you just described. Yeah. And, you could imagine that they're all cells. We're all cells. And in my body, I have one cell. And if everything of Hazel was obliterated, that one cell could grow another universe, because the cells, when you look at them, are universes. They multiply like the flower of life. That's how life is on Earth. That's how life is everywhere. I want to address Alison's question, where she says, please address what one needs to do when moving into a less denser dimension. So, Alison, I'm assuming that you're saying you want to move on into a parallel lifetime with the choices that you're going to make from this timeline that you're in now. So it's important to really be focused on what it is that you want this new timeline to be. Now, remember, you're not creating it. It's a choice, because it already exists in the unified field. It already exists. So we're not creating, we're choosing. All right, so that's the first thing to really, on a visceral level. When I say visceral, I mean an experience of that. So ask your cosmic team to give you an experience of that, so that you understand, truly understand, not with your mind, but with your heart and your experience. That's the only way we're ever going to get to grips with and create and choose properly. Now, I use the word create then because that's the paradox. We choose, and we also unfold and expand and create with our choices. So, okay, so everything exists, Alison. So now you're on this timeline, which is quite dense, and you have decided that you're going to make this, putting one foot in front of the other with these choices. Now, it's important that you remain focused on what you want for at least 30 days. And that is the intensity. But when I say intensity, I don't mean with effort, like, oh, I'm going to make this happen. Oh, it's just keeping your mind and your heart in a relaxed manner on what it is that you are choosing every step of the way. So, for example, you might feel this in your heart. It's important to feel it. So put your hand on your heart, feel your hand so that you're actually feeling your light body energies in your hand. So you're not thinking hand, you're feeling hand on heart. And then you're just going to kind of daydream. You're going to be thinking, right, I went to the shops today. This is in the new timeline, remember? I was driving in this car, I was riding the bike that I've always wanted, or I was even on roller skates because I've always wanted to learn, you know, this kind of thing. So there you are. Let's take roller skates. You're on these roller skates, you're fit and happy, you're smiling, and you're roller skating to your new home that happens to be this lovely little cottage with wisteria all around it. And out comes the cat, and oh, there's the dog sitting in the window. And you walk into your house and you can smell this beautiful food cooking. You can literally smell it. And then you can see that if you want a man in your life, this lovely man who's a spiritual partnership, you know, it's not a marriage that needs a contract. It's a beautiful, flowing, harmonious relationship. You're laughing together, dinner is ready, and you're sitting on your decking with a waterfall in the garden. Your Zen garden is beautifully created, and you feel it. You feel it. Now, this happened to me a long time ago. I want you to, right, I'll just relate this story, how these things happened for me. When I was asking, in those days, what I would call my spirit guides, every step of the way, how all of this worked. I was guided and taught every step of the way by my spirit guides, what we call now Alice and now Cosmic Team. And I was walking along the road in this village where I lived, and I went to my car, and I put the key in the car. I can't remember what, it was a Ford car. And suddenly the whole street changed, and I was putting my key into a Rolls Royce, a luxury vehicle. And as I opened the door, I could smell the new leather. And then all of it went back to me walking along in that the same time, you know, with the Ford car and everything else. And I just stood there and grasped what had just happened to me. I was being shown how we must really feel and experience timeline. You can't just think it for years. It just won't work like that. We have to feel it. And I would suggest, Alison, what I've just said, you know, the little story, that the daydream that I've just related, and you stay with that no matter what is happening in your life, which is the difficult part. But also we've got to remember that we also came here to experience this duality, to get mastery over all of these contrasts and concepts and, you know, our minds, and to master all of that. And that's another reason, you know, we're going through what we're going through. So it's really quite complex.
So it's kind of like the I look at it almost like the manifestation of our mind. So it's, for me, kind of a catch up between how I see myself and how I see the world. If I'm little Jeffrey walking down the street and I'm happy and I'm feeling it in my heart, I'm not just thinking, oh, I'm going to have a good day, like the fake it till you make it stupidity that was passed along to me, and I even bought into it a long time ago.
Yeah, no,
but say, okay, so I'm walking down the street and I'm happy, feeling from the inside happiness, emitting love. The chances of me running into like-minded Jeffreys walking down the street who are emitting the same thing are very high. It's because our little aura field is there, and people are seeing it, whether or not they're seeing the colors that I'm wearing or even the colors that are around me. This is what draws people to you and what you draw to them. When you see one person, say we have two people that are just radiating love, and then you have another one that's like at a very low density and they're operating in hate, they stick out a lot more. You don't even need to really see them per se. Sometimes you get that feeling like when someone's standing over you really close to your auric field, they're right there, you turn around and go like that. You can sense a person that's having a bad day, that are experiencing the same, I guess, timeline that we're referencing. So you're always happy, you're manifesting stuff, you're feeling it, But when you're in this zone, because we've all been here, we're humans. We're having experiences, just like Hazel said. And to truly live like this all the time, it is all from the heart. The moment your brain takes over your heart, you will be right here, like almost instantly, if you have not strengthened
Yeah.
your reserve up. I call it the reserve bank. If I built up enough conscious feeling of thought that are awesome, it doesn't matter if I have a door slammed in my face if I'm a salesperson and that's my job. It doesn't matter, because what does a salesman do? Just in a professional sense, they get that callus on them. They get used to feeling the rejected state, this area. So they'll be here no matter what, because they know that in a few moments they're going to be there because, say, someone's going to buy something from them. So if you kind of take that thought process and expand it a little further to how you feel, you got to almost feel like that salesman who is constantly being rejected, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect my field ever. It never will, because you've built yourself up to realize this is how I live, because I live from the heart. I live from my soul, and I'm always happy. But if you're constantly in this state of questioning and misery and it's just that state where you're just fighting so much to be here, you're going to stay here because you're thinking about this. You're not feeling it. And that's the main aspect, that when I made this jump over to here, where I may be here for an hour, 2 hours, a day, a half a day, a full day, just feeling crappy, no matter what, I will get back to here and stay here, because of this experience is almost like a reminder that, okay, I am human. I'm walking around. I bleed. I need to eat. I need to shower. I need to do all these things. So without killing that thought, you hit this point. These points don't last forever anymore. They do exist, though. Hazel could admit you probably have had a bad day yourself, right? Because we're still humans.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
And that's something that
it's not a. You have to get away from right or wrong, bad days. You know, even though we are progressing to the fifth dimension, so we're moving away from parallel realities a little bit, although that is a parallel reality, we're still going to have emotions. You know, we're not suddenly going to be bliss and light and joy in the fifth dimension. In fact, it's not such a big transition as people think it is. We're still going to have moods, which are our emotions manifesting how we feel. But the whole point of being in the third dimension is to experience the contrast. It's not, but yeah, of course, I've been desolate. I've been desperate. I've experienced it to the nth degree. And then I realized I'm done with that experience. It wasn't right or wrong, good or bad. It was the experience, the density of the energy that I came here to master. Because as we all know, that kind of energy in gravity is massive to overcome and then switch into the heart again. But that's what we came to do. But we came here to do it. And there are those listening now, you just know when you're done. It's like, and suddenly you're done. Mm-hmm. You can't manufacture that. You can't pretend, because if you're pretending, your life's going to carry on the same. Mm-hmm. I'm done. I'm done with that.
Now, Hazel, how does that relate to then your relationships with other individuals in your life that are connected to you, be it a husband, a wife, a brother, or a sister? You're now awake. You see things. You feel things. You're alive. You're vibrant. You're just awesome. But when you turn to them and you're communicating with them, what can you pass along as thoughts and feelings to live by? How do you address those people that may still be in that dense level of reality where they're worrisome and stuff?
Well, that's one, like you and me, Jeffrey. They too have many parallel realities. Now, I can align myself, for example, with my sister. I'm going to go and see my sister, right? And I can set the intention and the focus that I am going to only relate to her fifth dimensional self, to the parallel reality that she lives in, that is full of laughter and joy and harmony, and we're getting on and we're having a really good time. I set that intention, that focus, before I go there.
What do you say to a skeptic?
Because
what do you
I
say
am
to that
done.
person that says, I don't believe it?
Well, I say, well, I can't help that. You have to experience these things for yourself. If you believe it, you're coming from your head, and we cannot give other people their experiences. And there's no point saying, if somebody says to me, I don't believe you, that's fair enough. I can't make you believe. I don't want to make you believe. I don't want to prove anything. I can be a signpost, you know. But in my earlier days, I wanted the whole world to know what I know and what I knew then. And then I realized they didn't really want to know. Well, it was just my joy wanting to spread it.
It's like force feeding a baby
and so now I
don't want to eat.
Right. Yeah, you could say, you know, in my early days, my parallel timeline was that I came through realizing I was psychic. I became a psychic medium. I went to the spiritualist church and so on and so forth. But there is no way that I could ever go back on that timeline. That is like another life. It's like I've reincarnated without dying. That is what changing timelines feels like.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it feels like. But so, I can still go back on this timeline to the bricks and the mortar where I was in that church, but I don't want to go back into the consciousness of it. Because it's all about consciousness. Bricks and the mortar is still there, but I am done with the consciousness timeline, which is what Kathy alluded to earlier in one of her questions. So does that make sense? I am, yes, that timeline, yes, is.
So let's just.
And you've got to remember that.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Hazel. It's just everyone does need to get going in the next 10 minutes or so. So I want to just briefly go over some of the things that we covered. We finished at the last thought of experiencing the contrast of our dense three-dimensional space. We've talked about the parallel realities, how Hazel has 1432 and then 2016, and how they're kind of intersecting or interwoven, if that might even be a better way of describing it. Then we also talked about people who could look into the future, like Nostradamus and Leonardo da Vinci, and how they could more or less like leapfrog to the interwoven timelines. And finally, we also talked about railway tracks, because that was what I didn't see it as like a sphere. I thought it was always like a line. But what I was clarifying today is, like, if I'm having, say, a bad day or it carries on, then I'm operating on a lower frequency. I'm having my good days, I'm up here. And we're kind of going through this experiencing of contrast. Well, the timeline is going on, but the timeline doesn't look like this. It looks like this, and it's in an infinite.
Yeah,
if you draw a line,
Kathy said, it's a spiral.
Linear. Yeah. So yeah, that's
like Kathy said, it's a spiral.
Yes. Yeah. It is a spiral. So what I was saying is, I thought things were like that zigzag line. But it's not. It's more like if you drew the circle around and you put your, say, your good days and bad days up and down, and then connected them, they're still going in a circular fashion. Anyways, I think I'm over explaining, and might have lost myself on other people in that one. But just in going over all of that, we're now in the golden age, Hazel. Do we have to fight so much to be?
Some are.
Do we have to fight, or is that word even relevant anymore? Because I'm feeling like things are good.
Yeah, no, we don't fight. Fighting is a limiting belief that we need to, it's an ego structure that within us that we've got to fight for survival. No, we just allow, we relax and we allow and we choose. And we need to know what we want so we can choose it. Most people don't know what they want. And that's why they, they're tiptoeing across timelines all the time. Every time you change your mind, you're on a different timeline. And if you stay in that, I've changed my mind, then you carry on in that new timeline. I've changed my mind, I don't love you. I thought I did, but I don't. So you're on a different timeline. Every time we change our mind at this level of density, that is a new timeline. And the thoughts that we have when they leave our mind carry on. They don't just die. If they are filled with intense emotion and feeling, those thoughts carry on. They are a living consciousness. And some people, when they pray, I say to some people, just say a little prayer. Let me see how your mind's working. And they pray, and the prayer comes out to there, and it just disintegrates because there's no sustenance to it. There's no spirit in it. They're praying, and it's all just wishy-washy. Don't be lukewarm. Be hot or cold. Know what you want. That's the trick. Knowing what we want to choose that are in all these timelines everywhere. What do you want, my friend?
It's kind of like write your own movie script.
Struggle. Yes. But it's very complex, as you might imagine. But I think we've kind of got the gist of it today. We are. It's incredible.
So we have Allison asking if we've decided on next week's subject or not. Hazel, do you have any recommendations for next week? Put it on the board.
Oh, not right now, do you, Jeffrey? Alison, you give us a subject, darling. What would you like us to talk about?
While Allison is thinking about that, I'm going to break out my little deck of cards. I've already charged it, which is why it sounds so awesome. When you have a low density deck of energy, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it's slapping like a card. So I'm not even going to shuffle it. And we're going to just take the card on the top. And it's a magical word. And it's believe. And when I feel this card right now, it's the direction that we're heading as a society, as this timeline we're on together in the golden age. I can feel us all believing in something more, something that was supposed to be here a long time ago, and it's love, and it should be resonating through us. And I believe that more people are going to be waking up and seeing that living with purpose and living with love is the way that we're supposed to. And sometimes when we look at these images and we just see the glowing nature and the angels just flowing all around, it's just amazing how, when I'm saying we're living as a collective society and we're believing together, if you can clearly make out, there's angels upon angels. It's almost like there's infinite timelines just in this sphere alone. And with our palms out like that, normally when we're holding our palms out, we're not in an aggressive fashion. We're welcoming people. And if I'm moving my hands like this, the belief is not there. And like Hazel was talking about, it's that the fight it's over, because what we do now is that we believe in ourselves. We believe that the world is in a good place. And that was the top of the deck, and I sure didn't stack it. I just energized it. So I'm Jeffrey Tracy, and this lovely lady, who I think is still in a different area than she normally is. Hazel, are you in England just by chance still, or are you out of the country?
No, I'm in Cape Town. I'm on a different timeline, Jeffrey. I've jumped timelines, literally. I'm in Cape Town in South Africa. So I'm on a parallel timeline, literally. And my home back in England does not exist for me right now because I'm not there. This timeline, perfect example, and I'm tingling all over.
I was
We
thinking.
have to remember, let us make our choices. We are stepping onto a parallel timeline, a parallel collective consciousness, a parallel earth that we are calling, because naming something is very, very powerful. We're calling it the golden age. And we are choosing this, but we are choosing it for everyone.
Amen.
That means for those, like the 100 monkey syndrome, those that hear the call may or may not choose it too. God bless you all. Isn't it wonderful?
I'm excited, ecstatic, energized. Allison was saying, it's a great subject to continue today with, just hearing the word believe, seeing it, feeling it, the resonance, and just not only my tone of voice, but in the word itself, right? So Hazel, if you want to just say thank you to everyone and so forth.
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey, for doing all the technical stuff, for showing up, for making things very uncomplicated for us all to understand, and for Alison and Kathy and everyone else. So much love to you all, and hopefully see you next week.
Bye-bye.